you're very good at declaring intention.
Yes.
And it's one of the things that when I got to know you first, I found brash and uncomfortable because I'm not good at declaring intention because it's not really how we roll in Ireland and particularly how I'm wired. And I found it kind of like it rubbed for me.
Can I have an example?
I don't remember a specific example.
Yeah,
I'd rather not say. But it
Can't imagine us rubbing, but yeah.
As I've gotten to know you, that's really good. As I've gotten to know you, it's become one of my favorite things about you. Whatever discomfort I have around it, I'm leaning into it with you because I have so much to learn in that regard.
Totally. Subscription cars, that's the way to go.
I was thinking about that with the Tesla. I was thinking today, like, what if I just wanted to get a Model S tomorrow? I mean, you could do that if you were in that circumstance. You know, maybe 6 month minimum, but it'd be nice to be able to just, I want another one, so.
Turo. Just rent it.
I know. It's too late for that.
I do like the X, though. I have to say.
Yeah, the X is
pretty
tight.
partial to the X.
I realized I have love for it. The doors were a little much for me in the beginning, but now I kind of have love for it and almost wish I got it because I'm driving this nice sedan. I'm like, kind of wish I had the X.
What's the fold-down seat situation?
What do you mean?
Do the seats fold down and it's like SUV style?
Yeah, exactly.
Probably get the bike right inside.
Yep, that's why I want it, to bring my bike around. Fuck. 7-seater. You can bring the whole family dinner out to in one car.
You do a little picnic vibes.
So I'm a little bummed I didn't get the X and I got the S, but the S is so nice, so it is what it is. I went out for a leisurely drive today. Went to the gardens before this.
Oh, nice.
Which was nice. Josh was doing work, so I was sitting on the couch. Like, why am I on the couch when I could be outside at the gardens for a quick hour walk? Kind of get in podcast world. Put on a Rogan, Adam Curry podcast and listen to them talk and
get drunk.
Yeah, dude,
fucking useless. It's funny how the rhythm has changed in the new studio. It's like, it's really different. I listened to the Ron White one today.
Yeah.
About half of that too. And it was like, wow, this is really different. It's like, it's just not like the chemistry is different. It's not there. But I'm sure it'll be there shortly. Yeah. It's just interesting.
How are you guys feeling this week?
Wow.
2 weeks off.
It's intense.
Yeah.
It's an intense moment.
Time,
Yeah. There's a lot. I was thinking driving down here, just my feeling about the city and my feeling of like I can't see flames on the hills behind my house, but I can see smoke coming from smoldering fires, and there's helicopters overhead and fucking planes. And we got the official like emergency text last night, be ready to evacuate. And I'm driving down here and LA feels, you know, I was joking with a friend of mine, but it's like the basics of life. We haven't had water delivered in 4 weeks. You know, mail is kind of working, kind of not. Banking is not really working. Just getting a wire done recently for something I sold was a real, like we had to chase someone in management to make the wire happen. And they were just kind of like, yeah, that's kind of how it is right now.
What?
Power cuts around the city. So there's a sense of kind of like the basics not working.
Yeah.
It's a destabilization.
It's a destabilization. So I kind of feel that as well as a time of kind of, I think I said to you and Kyle on the phone last night or on the Google Meet Spider, that was like ugly growth, you know, like ugly crying. But when you're growing and it's like, it's just fucking messy.
Yeah.
It's just messy internally. It's like you're working on old, ugly shit. And that's kind of where I'm at personally. Not personally. Personally, we're in good shape, work-wise, I mean.
Are you in Warner Brothers archives right now working on old ugly shit, mastering house?
And how do you mean? Sorry.
Like catalog?
Yeah, like catalog music?
No.
Oh.
No, I mean...
I was making a literal joke. It didn't get laughed at all.
I didn't.
It was old, ugly Warner Brothers music. I mean, I'm sure someone's doing it.
Let's get loose.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just it's a funny moment of growth, kind of like facing up to sort of facts about myself and how I work and what I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
Our conversation the other day was really good. You know, it was sort of on the calendar as in service of your Michael work moment, but it was really
Yeah, why don't we summarize what we were doing there? Because that was
good and difficult. I was going to ask you before if you wanted to talk about it, but I figured you may or may not. But
I didn't make it back in time, so this will be nice for me to get a catch up.
It would.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to thank you both. I really appreciated it because I did put it on the calendar as I think it said unfuck your status. That's the calendar event. I needed my friends around to weigh in on what I've been doing and where I'm going, and just getting feedback around where I kind of want to take things, and any blind spots and any positive things that I'm doing that I might not notice, like just kind of all of it. I don't know how to summarize that in one word. I think it's all of those things. And so I needed that. This time is, like you said, it's ugly growth. It's sort of these things that like when the speed of the city is on full blast, we kind of just like, we don't have time to really pay attention to. And now that things are slowing down a little bit and we're inside more, I know I'm definitely inside more, too much.
Yeah, because the air is so fucked.
Yeah,
up.
yeah, exactly. Like my walks have been
outside.
cut out, and it's super weird. And so like being inside, it's just time to reflect and reflect and reflect. And, having started a business recently, I mean, literally at the beginning of all of this, like the beginning of quarantine, was when February is when the LLC was formed. I was working a little bit before that, but yeah, like having started a quarantine company, quarantine partners, the whole business has been sort of developed around this really turbulent, you could even say traumatic time. And,
yes.
I've done a bunch of work that I'm really proud of with people that I'm really happy to have worked with. And I'm just like, I feel like I'm at this point financially and mentally and kind of where the projects are that I need to stop and reflect before I find myself buried under work that I didn't want, or the person that I didn't want to be, or sort of the direction of the business that I didn't want to take it, but I thought I needed to, in the energy of the moment. And I think this time, and I think this time emphasizes that, like, hey, wait, hold on, like it's everything's paused.
Yeah, pause.
So pause, yeah. And I designed this post for PMC with this big ass pause button on black, just these two white monolithic pause symbols. For that reason, it's definitely a time to pause and a time to reflect. And so that's why I invited you guys over. And I knew, and I spoke to Spider about it, this is probably not going to just be about me. In fact, nothing ever really is. Any conversation between two people, it's hard for it to just be about one person. Whether it's you sharing something you're learning from that, reflecting, and if it's you seeing something in me that you see in yourself, there's growth. Like there's so much to it. Just reading some like Jung, what's his name?
Young.
Both. But he was writing about that at one point in his life, and that we, the reflection that we see in others is a reflection of us, and it's sort of the best way to grow. And so I knew that either way, you guys coming through would benefit everyone. And yeah, so I was today kind of reflecting on all this. I had worked out. My trainer and I have been getting so much closer mentally about just what we're going through before we work out. And I'm teaching him how to play guitar too. So like, we're both teaching each other. We're starting our days teaching each other something new. But like before you could learn anything, I feel like you have to be in this mindset to like have whatever is blocking you from learning that day has to be cleared. In school, we didn't get the privilege to do that every day. The teacher wasn't sitting with each one of us, but to just tap into like, hey, what's going on? What's the update with like you talking to your mom about this like huge thing that you want to talk, like whatever it is, and for me, I'm just like, dude, I've been in a really low mood, and after he was like, you should meditate, have you? I was like, haven't in a bit, but instead of meditating, I decided to journal. And when I was journaling, I set a 30-minute timer, same that I would for meditation, and I just wrote. And it was super meditative to me. And halfway through this, I wrote this like thank you letter to Rory for the questions you were asking, for sort of how you were probing into my entire career, my life, where I'm going, what my primary aims are, and shout out to Michael Gerber for writing the E-Myth and talking about the primary aim. But yeah, I knew that that's what I wanted to focus on, just making sure that my aim was still intact with what I was doing. It's something that's really important to me. And, so I wrote this letter halfway through to you, and I was like, there was this moment of, do I send it as is, or do I kind of firm it up? It was like super real. Like, it was like, it's like what you write to yourself. And I was like, fuck it, I'm sending that. I just need to add a comma because it was a little weird, but and like I added some punctuation, but just sent it as is. Yeah. And so thank you both, honestly, for coming through and for being there in that moment. It was super important. There's that. I don't really know what else to say.
Well, the short term, like the immediate challenges are interesting because you've built this business and your week is already maxed out, right? So where do you go from there, right? And so when you start taking on, there are different ways to sort of grow the business out, a network of freelancers or employees, like what does it look like? Like so when we talk about the primary aim, it's like, okay, so how do we make the short-term steps be, steps toward the primary aim? Yeah. And it's not always clear, right? It's sort of, there are all these competing sort of ideas. And there's one thing that we're all sort of dealing with is like what we see as a deep oil well of potential around us that we've tapped into. And there's sort of oil squirting everywhere. And we're like, fuck, how do we make businesses out of this? Like, how do we systematize this and free ourselves? Yeah, and free ourselves of the sort of personal time commitment of doing it all yourself.
This reminds me, today when I was talking with Matthew, who's my personal trainer, him and I have been training for over 2 years now. And so he's become really close. We went to play pool when he used to live here, and now we see, 3 days a week. We see each other in the mornings, kind of start my day talking to this dude. And he was talking about Jay Shetty. Have you seen that guy? He's like a YouTuber, was a monk, and like basically was like in school, was being prepped to be like this finance bro. His family was like, that's what you have to do. And then he was like at school and he saw this monk give a speech to his class and was like, this is like the truest form of love that I've ever seen. Like everyone talks about love, but this is actual love. I'm going to talk to this guy. And he said, hey, can I follow you to every talk you're giving? And he's like, sure. And then he just followed him around. And then eventually he studied and did that whole thing. And now he's a YouTuber, really just such a sweet person when you watch his interviews. And he just released a book and Matt's reading it. And the first exercise is writing about your values, beliefs, your primary aims essentially, but mapping it to where do you feel like that actually came from? Like, is it yours? Or did you develop this in the military? Or did you develop this from your mom or your dad or your siblings or whatever? And so he's going through that exercise right now. But we were talking about that when you were here, like, what is my primary aim? And there was just this moment that was really when we were walking back from Eat, Drink, Americano, shout out. Yes. It's an interesting name. I got to ask them about that at one point. Yeah. It sounds like it doesn't sound like a place. But
instructions.
We're walking back and it just hit me. I'm like, I'm not a competitive person. Like, I don't like to compete in that sense. I really am pretty basic. I've always said that, like, I like basic girls. I always say that. I'm just like, I'm like pretty basic. And I was kind of ashamed by that, like, for a while. And I like a simple life. Like, I really, my vision of like, here's what an awesome company would be is like, I'm designing, I get to travel, I see my friends in different countries and states that I've made over the years. And then I get to see my family and spend time with them for the holidays and whatever kind of days that I feel like spending with them. And then, shoot back to whatever city I'm in.
Quick interjection there. I'm having a really hard time with labeling in general these last few months. So to label yourself as basic is completely irrelevant because one cannot label themselves as something that they actually are because no one is a label. So you're not basic. You might like basic things and have basic tendencies.
Yeah.
But we can just get rid of that word and you can just like what you like. So anyway, back to your...
No, that's a great point. I mean...
Compared to what, though? So what would be like grandiose? Like, because I know I have really grandiose ideas. But I want to live simply too. But I wouldn't describe the simple that I...
Right.
The simple is not basic to me.
Right.
You know, I mean...
I'd like a definition of basic outside of I need soap to wash my hands, water. To, it's just like, what does that even mean? It's anyway.
I guess
quick interjection.
It's past those. I guess on a hierarchy of basics.
Basic is taken on new connotation.
Yeah, it definitely has.
It's simple's probably.
Yeah. So it's
the intention there,
and I think definition is in order there. I mean, I like. The way I was describing it, I think, is how I'm defining basic is I want to spend time with family more than many people do. I want to, I don't want to work on too many things. And I don't mean that in like a lazy way. Like I want to, I know that I can only handle so much and I know that I pour a lot into it.
I think
you're aware of your bandwidth.
Bandwidth, but also what the theme that came up a lot during the conversation the other day, we kind of came back to it and we looped it and came back several times was, the idea of the character of your day. What does a day feel like? And you think about, I think I mentioned Steve Jobs as someone who, you read his bio and it's like, I read that biography and it's like, clearly, his ambition for Apple and for the company, it was brutal and everyone around him suffered. Everyone. Right. Very few people had really much nice to say about him interpersonally. He was driven by this crazy fire to make things better. And we all benefit every day, right? The phone in my hand that I made that note in to talk to.
And the laptop in the
side. Yeah, everything. The guy was brilliant, but he was feeding a fire in his belly and everything else came second. And I've been sort of meditating on that recently. Like, what does it matter if I do? The examples I gave you was like, oh, we just all got a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer, or oh, we just won so much money, or inherited so much money that we don't have to think about money ever again. Yeah. So now, what is the character of your day? What do you use your time for? Right. And that's what I understood. Your basic thing was it's a way of characterizing. You're not Steve Jobs. Right. You don't care about running a design empire. You care more about the character of your day. His individual, I'm using him and I don't know much about him. I never met the dude, but I'm using him as a stand-in. But the character of his days may or may not have been really shitty. What he achieved was awesome. If you weren't his kid or his wife. Right. But you're talking about wives. Yeah. What you're talking about is where we landed was sort of an ownership, at least in the conversation, of the character of your days. Yes. And actually, it matters more to me that my limited time on this earth is kind of joyful and meaningful than that there's some building with my name on it. Right. Or you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's not true for everyone. And what's really interesting is that via the Unfuck work that Spider and I are doing, more and more of our online consults are becoming about people they're fucked in their rooms, but they're more fucked in their heads in terms of what they want or where they're headed or what they need,
what they think they want,
or what they think they need,
what they think the best move is.
And
everyone's sort of trying to work this out on their own without.
What's been super interesting is interrogating. Sorry, it's a bad choice of words in the context. Is exploring their ambition and sort of making friends with whatever your level of ambition is. There's people we've talked about who are like, I fucking gotta make it. Like, I'll sell my children and I'll fucking burn cities to make it.
Remortgage.
And there's other people. We had a call a couple of weeks ago with a dude and he's like, he lives in a not in LA or New York, he's in a
Where's that? There's other places?
It's the bit in the middle. And he lives in the bit in the middle
of the earth.
And
Middle Earth.
but he
otherwise known as Austin, Texas.
I like doing a lot of stuff. I don't really want to focus. I don't really care about the building with my name on it or the hit record. He was really quite clear when we explored it that he's not willing to make some of the sacrifices that it would take to get, you know, whatever. And it really helps clarify what you do next. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you know, I think what's interesting about that to me is I've always been more than happy and actually drawn to people that do have the opposite view. It's like, it's not that I'm against the view. I'm just not that's not my primary aim. Completely. And so it's been interesting. And I think that moment walking back was me realizing, like, I was trying to understand, like, I've only ever worked around people, Jon included, that have had a different level of ambition and like energy, and a very similar one to many other business owners I've worked with and people I've worked with. And I admire it. And there's been this moment of like, is that the same mode that I need to be in? And then it was like, no, actually, the whole time I haven't been. So, you know, like, you know,
the successful realization of Michael is not, may not be via that route,
right?
Right now,
right. And I'm excited to do, like, I'm actually get excited to speak to people that are so energized. You know, Nathan, super fucking energized, wants to take on all the projects, do all the great shit he can. It's amazing, it's impressive, and I'm like, in the back of my head, I'm like, I can't see myself.
This is Nate, just for listeners, this is Nathan Danzer at the Hit Lab in Nashville, who is a mastering engineer and a client of yours as a design client.
Yes, exactly. That was cool. That's like I remember a pop-up video when like the facts would come up. Yeah, that was tight. That was that moment.
Also just that's something that can switch, right? I mean, a lot of people, myself included, had that ambition for survivalist reasons, right? Like there was just no other way, you know. And now that I'm at a certain point in my life and career, I was texting with Geoff Ellis today about my summer work schedule is Tuesday through Thursday right now, and I'm only working on those 3 days a week for this month and a half of summer because, well, simply I don't want to otherwise. I have the opportunity to. There's plenty of work to do, and I'm making my schedule, setting my boundaries so I can have a little bit of a summer, spend time with girlfriend. If I was that person the entire time of wanting to be overly competitive and ambitious and run the mix show for forever and ever, that might not be the case this year at all. And I see this as my future. Like I see that as my, oh no, I'm going to work 5 days a week, and over the summer I might work 3 or 4. And,
you made a good case earlier for Michael not attaching himself to the word basic. Not, you know, what do these words mean? They're limiting, right? And this is something that I think we're discovering via our calls is we're quite agnostic. Yes. Actually, we're quite, I think we want to be loving of wherever you land on that spectrum. That sounds very fucking metaphysical, but actually, I want an ambitious person to build the next Apple. Right. And if there's anything Spider and I, or you and I, or Jon and I can do to help him or her, we should.
Right.
And I want someone who wants to live in small town America or small town Italy or wherever, making records with their friends or whatever, making wine with their friends or whatever, and spending 3 days a week with their elderly parents or whatever that looks like. Anywhere in that ambition isn't the whole point to help people realize it. So I think a lot of people have, and you definitely don't, and I know this from our conversation the other day, want to, because they're uncomfortable with their level of ambition, they want to mischaracterize other people.
Yes.
Oh, that guy would fucking, you know, like I used the phrase sell his children earlier, right? And that's quite an Irish approach to it, because we have quite a...
You guys sell children.
Do you know the... Yeah. Do you know the tall poppy thing? Have you heard that phrase? So I got this from a friend, a Japanese Australian guy that I met in electronics, and I had never heard it, but tall poppy is the concept that you don't like people who succeed. So there's a field of poppies, and one is growing taller than the others. So instead of saying, look at the beautiful tall poppy, you chop the head off it. And you send a message to all the other poppies, don't be getting ahead of yourselves here. Don't be, none of your big ideas, We're just, you know.
I just imagine when you said poppy this time, it was P-A-P-I, like all the other poppies.
Not in my lexicon.
The bodega poppies.
Well, the impetus for me for the conversations nights with engineers at the gift shop was to let engineers have a place to come and talk about their successes, talk about what makes them feel good, and not feel like they have to be overly competitive with other engineers. Let's open the gate so we can tout each other's success. And I love the fact that so-and-so has a top 5 right now when I don't have one. Like, why does that matter?
Yes.
We'll all have our times to have top 5.
Yes.
Like, there's certain people that get more than others, and it's an experience thing, and it's you hit a flow state, and you just get in there, and you have success that lasts a certain amount of time, and like this is all open to change, and just because
or there's no success in air quotes. There's I'm going to stay in my town, and I'm going to work a day job and record bands at the weekend because I love it, and that's it, and I'm good with that. And sort of making friends with that level of ambition, if that's what someone really wants. Now, if they're stuck there because of fear or because their mom says you can't leave town because no one leaves town or whatever, some weird constraint, that's sad to me. But I think something that certainly I've realized, I don't know, I'm speaking for you, Spider, but the exploring this level of ambition, because it really helps for us frame what the next move is. If you're super ambitious and we have a client in London right now that we're helping, and all of our responses to his acoustic needs are based around the fact that he's coming to LA as soon as he can.
Right.
Yeah.
So don't buy and own expensive custom shit in your studio. Buy stuff we can resell on the London equivalent of Craigslist. Stay lean, put money in your bank account savings, not into the gear or the thing. How little can we spend to springboard you to LA?
Or put a mask on and get the fuck over here. What's going on?
Yeah, I know he's got reasons.
He's pub deal sessions. He's got stuff.
He's doing the right moves.
Yeah.
But his level of ambition framed for us the choice of what goes where in his room acoustically and how much we spend and when we do it. And the answer would be very different for someone who's camping out in London, whose parents own the building, who is working on a section of music that's dying or thriving or whatever. The context matters enormously. Well,
we're taking people through a process to arrive at the enough confidence to make a choice, to make a decision.
Yeah.
And if we have a responsibility to take into account the bigger picture, or else what we advise someone to do may trap them, right? And we don't feel good about that, right? We have a responsibility to help that expenditure and time and resource and all of that, this opportunity to be toward the primary goal. And I think in Michael's case, there are a variety of options ahead of you, and you're looking forward to develop the confidence in a series of choices or to go down a certain path with the business. And that's the process.
Yeah. That was where I landed, like at, probably the last hour of our thing was like, I don't know that I know anyone where all of the other boxes are already checked. Like your ability, your everything you need, you have. It's literally just which direction do you want to go.
Right.
There's no like, oh, if only he had a dope studio. If only the dude owned a laptop.
Right.
If only he could get a Photoshop license.
Yeah.
Like, if only he knew people. If only he was personable. Like, all of these things you had. If only he had some experience at the corporate level. It's like, this guy can rock a fucking boardroom. No problem.
Right.
He's done it 100 times, right? So it was really fun to be like, actually, if we can draw back the bow and figure out which direction to point it, we're striking a bullseye. Like, we rarely have that in our work. I certainly, I can hear an awesome song with a client that I love interacting with. I can master it the best I can. And I can say, this is fucking amazing. And then it gets released in crickets. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, you just don't know.
Right.
Whereas with you, I have a whole lot more confidence, which is really fun.
Yeah.
It made it really joyful for me the other day.
And that's why I thanked you. I thanked you, but I really thanked both of you. And even Jon, too, for his help outside of that day. I mean, there's been other days. More than 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it had me jazzed about the directions that could be possible. And it reminded me of another scenario right now that I'm in, working on this new record that I've talked about a few times. I hit this like plateau where I'm like, I don't know what to do now. Like it's kind of feels done, but doesn't feel done like to the degree that I want. And I was talking to Danny Klein, awesome producer, close friend of mine. And he listened to it and said like, it just needs more you. And I was like, fuck, that's daunting, dude. Like, I don't know how to even do a lot of technical
Hold on. Danny, I can't wait for you to hear this. That entire project has so much of you in it. I completely disagree with that comment.
No, I don't, because he was right in terms of the rest of the context of that statement. I think there's a lot of me in it, and where I've taken it over the last week, based on that conversation, it ended on, you're making a motion picture, like fill it out, round out the scenes, put a background on it, make it nice. I mean, things you were saying too, add an EBO, add some more textures, that sort of stuff.
That will loosen it up.
Yeah. And it's been, that experience has been really freeing. Adding these new sounds, just tweaking little things here and there. I've been getting all these recordings from COVID early days, like week 1 COVID in America, where Fauci's like, yeah, there's 3 cases here and there's nothing to really worry about. And then there's one, so that opens the record.
Wow.
And then there's a clip where they're talking about salons like closing and reopening and all these protocols and no one knowing what to, it's just like the record now has these like I was like, wait, let me take them into my world fully. Like, what was I hearing when I made the record? And what is the anxiety, and what are the music? What songs am I kind of referencing? Like, I went back to like high school, middle school, discovering music. I'm like, let me remix these things and put them in the beginnings and in the
you're
middle.
letting people into your head.
Yeah. And that was, and that same experience happened the other day. And I think at the end of it was like, yeah, there are a lot of great directions, but without getting overwhelmed about it, it's more so like, how can I just be more me? And then even today, I had 2 different calls with different clients, and they were way better. I felt like just knowing more me, you know?
Well, I wrote you 2 responses today, but the second one was, this is what the conversation is about. Not patting ourselves on the back, but supporting each other as we develop.
Yeah.
And it's like all of this ugly growth, certainly for me that I'm going through, is an outcome of our conversation initially, and then this conversation as we got to know each other better, John and I, and you and I. It's been really profound for me. And it's sort of bringing me face to face with which was sort of the previous response that I wrote to you, which is the end of it, was I'm processing old shit about my relationship to work and money. Old stuff. Stuff that happened.
Doing it right now.
I was driving down tonight, and it's like these traumas that are more than half a lifetime ago that defined my relationship to work and overwork and inefficiency and the need to be busy, whether it makes any sense or not. Just fucking be busy. You know what I mean?
Being such a process person, I think one of the the enemies of process is people's need to be busy, because process actually frees you up. It takes a lot of work off the table, and people that need to be busy are like, no, that can't work. There's no way to repeat this. There's only one me. It's like, yeah, there is, but there's only one you and all the shit you're bringing to it. It's like, if there's just a series of steps and anyone could do that, anyone in a general sense, but ideally anyone, if you could really get down to the process being, ironed out, it's like, you might not overwork, but you might actually have a great output at the same time.
So
what a beautiful
on
thing.
point.
It's really fucked up. I'm not special anymore if someone else can do this.
Right.
Really fucked
Or
up.
I'll get a second to deal with my shit.
Right.
I can't sit still long enough.
Exactly. When I didn't consciously make this decision, but when I was young and when these events sort of took place that drove me to this place, the overworking is so toxic, because if you start taking Oxy or if you start drinking too much, someone will say, dude, when was the last time you shaved? Like, you need a fucking shower. Like, what you missed the meeting today. Like, we had podcast on Wednesday. Where were you?
Right.
Like, people will start calling
off,
you.
Man.
Yeah, you're falling off. You're a mess.
Yeah,
like, your wife called me the other day crying, whatever. You overwork, especially here, but in Ireland too. It's like, it's such a good cover. Yeah, gotta work, clients, they need what they need.
On my grind.
Frame it any way you want. Yeah. It's so...
Hashtag no days off.
Yeah. I remember an aunt of mine who died not long after she of cancer. I never was very close to her, but she said, you're going to burn out. Like, do you know what that means? Like, she was very direct. And she was like, you know what that means? Do you know what burnout means? You know how that feels? Like, it's not, why are you doing this? It's like, what's the point? She was kind of asking some of the same questions I was asking you the other day. Right. But in a very blunt way. We weren't close, so it didn't land at all with me. I was like, I don't know who you are, whatever. But that sort of overwork is very toxic because of that.
I mean, you have to decide if you like other things besides work too. I'm not sure that most of my life I liked other things besides work, right? Getting to make music for a living and getting to mess around in a studio is super fun. I didn't like going to bars. I didn't like going other places. Once I was old enough to go to New York City and stuff, like there's, culture there that's nice and museums and jazz clubs. And yeah, there's other things I do clearly, but overall, the studio was the playground. It felt like the place to go. So I understand why people don't want to leave it. I mean, there's endless possibilities of creativity in there, but...
And it's not just work in the studio. And that kind of, you have friends over. It's like, it's sort of a lifestyle. It includes more than work.
Yeah, so I don't want to minimize necessarily. I want to play that other angle because I actually see the other side of it now for the first time. And granted, I'm 34 years old, so... bit late to the game on that, but I'm just starting to see there's other things outside the studio that give me joy, but it still takes practice, right? So today while Josh was working, I was sitting on the couch, and instead of sitting on the couch, I said, I should go to the Huntington Library and walk in the gardens and get sun and listen to a podcast, or not listen to the birds chirp, or just go see what other people look like outside, but I could have just sat on the couch because that gives me enjoyment. Like, I like sitting on the couch. I like learning the practice of doing nothing. We're constantly digesting media information, both voluntarily and involuntarily in times like this. I mean, we all have our podcasts and books we like to read and things we like to listen to. And then there's news and there's Twitter and there's things that and Instagram and whatever. There's so much access to information. I'm actually doing my best right now to learn what it's like to do nothing, right? And it's very hard. I'm not very good at it. And it's something I actually want to get good at this by the end of this year, but that's another thing. But something Michael was talking about a minute ago was that, Matt, your trainer, asked you if you've been meditating. You're like, no, but I'm journaling, and that's meditative to me. And I wanted to kind of jump back to that because that isn't meditative to you. That's meditative, right? Any point of focus that is in the present is meditation, right? So I wanted to, put a pin there and come back to it because it's when you're sitting for meditation practice, that's sitting in the meditation practice. That is meditation, but we should be sitting in order to be able to do that in other ways. And for a lot of people, myself included, mixing a record is meditative. The outside world disappears. The focus is very poignant and specific, and I can exist and gain access to a flow state very easily because I'm very well practiced at that. But it's quite easy to dismiss, quite honestly, anything else, and that doesn't seem like a healthy way of living. So I'm constantly going back to the Sam Harris moral landscape of suffering to well-being, and that's the spectrum, right? That's pick where you are on that spectrum. And having two pretty near-death experiences in life have very much put me in the grateful part of that spectrum towards the well-being is where I want to exist mostly. I have very little, I have a very, like a contrarian point of view in my life is not somewhere where I want to be, where everything is pessimistic and the other way, versus let's go with the flow here and see where it leads me and find it. And not in a new agey sense of, go with the flow, man. Like quite literally go where things are going and see their outcome, because you might be surprised with the simple, or you can use the word basic, but a simple sense of outcome of simple rewards, a dinner with your friends, a song coming out, not it being a top 10, like just a simple release that you get to hear your work somewhere. And instead of crickets, there's some resonance, there's some glow, right? There's this, it's about pinpointing where on that spectrum you want to lie, and what takes you to that highest point on that well-being spectrum. I mean, maybe there's a subset of the population that wants to suffer, and masochists exist.
I think that's really interesting, because if we stopped 10 people on the street and explained that concept of that you just did, the spectrum and well-being, suffering, say, where would you like to be? All 10 people would say, I would like to be right at the sweet spot of the well-being, right?
Yeah.
And then they will leave you and get right back into the groove of doing the things that make them suffer. And so these are very
guilty
hard.
of it.
They're hard to see.
They're hard to see,
inside.
and they're very hard to.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the mechanisms that we talked about the other day behind your stuff were really, I didn't know them before, and they were really, I wouldn't have guessed them. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's very hard to see what the engines are of. Suffering sounds like a strong word in that context, but the engines of your suffering are, but
it is low mood is suffering to a degree, somewhere on the spectrum.
I'm not being dismissive. I'm just trying to, I'm trying to not be dramatic.
It doesn't have to inflict physical pain for it to be suffering.
No, we're using that word at home a lot more with the kids too. As kind of like choices you make and whether they lead you to a better place. And the girls, like my 6-year-old is using the word suffering, and it's, it sounds kind of high-minded, but she's actually got a good handle on like what it means, like and how often you have the choice not to.
Well, you have a choice to suffer or not when something doesn't go your way, and that feeling, quite honestly, I think it only lasts seconds. It lasts less than a minute. When something doesn't go your way, to realize that, there's another way for it to have gone, and it went that way instead. It's just like it can't
if you're
last.
lost in thought, it can last years.
Yeah.
It's only when you sort of zoom out and recognize that you are aware of it, right? It's sort of that thing you learn in mindfulness meditation, is to sort of be aware of your own awareness.
Yeah.
And then you're aware of the feeling, and then it's hard. Without those thoughts that are kind of swirling around in your head,
hold on to it. Almost
it's hard
anything.
to hold on to that suffering. It's hard.
Yeah.
I think of the back to the labeling thing. I'm extremely competitive. Like that's just ingrained in me. But I'm not competitive. Jonathan Castelli, have competitive tendencies. Doesn't mean I'm competitive. And like I'm going to go around and say, "Hi, I'm John, and I'm competitive." Like this is I don't identify
I'm competitive
with.
John.
I remember.
Like that's a ridiculous thing to imagine labeling oneself that way. Though I have these tendencies.
My younger brother in Ireland, he's 3 years younger than me, and we get on okay, but often we rub each other, and it's because of the things that annoy me about him are the things that are like me, classic family stuff. But I remember having a conversation with him one time, and he was like, this is just how I am, this is it. And
to me, it fucking statement.
Triggered me.
I hate that statement.
Yeah,
so
because
much.
I just hate
very few things.
I hate anything that sort of precludes growth, because that growth is all I'm interested in. Growth and developing and learning are like, that's everything, right? And so the idea that it's like, I'm this kind of person, and that's really what you were touching on with the idea that someone would internalize the concept of being basic. Really, for you, it's a kind of a making peace with your ambitions, a kind of an acceptance. But I do understand the
limiting potential of it.
But you make that choice to accept who you are, not who you are as a thing.
Yes,
it's the simple.
Right.
It's a simpler perspective on that. We are products of all our influence. So you're influenced by super high-minded, ambitious people, and you're also by basic people. And why are they basic, and why are people high-minded and ambitious? You don't know them.
Right.
they also might like to go to their aunt's house and walk their dog while their aunt is working at somewhere, Costco or whatever their life is like. You know,
sure.
That's how they come down to that level.
I had an interesting conversation with someone this week, and at some point the idea of me doing work for him came up, and something about money and budgets, and he made a comment along the lines of, you know, I want to do this, but I kind of don't want you to think that I'm made of money. And I sort of said, well, you know, like, I don't care if you're made of money or not. Like, what I'm going to offer you or what we're going to do for you has no relation to that. Like, it will be a price for a job, and it will be if you were poor or wealthy. But mostly what struck me was, you know, and the way I phrased it to him was like, dude, I know a lot of wealthy people. I've been around people with a ton of money. It's meaningless to the interaction. You know what I mean? It's like, and often it has there's no correlation to happiness. I know there is in the data, but in my experience, a lot of the wealthiest people I've ever met, I wouldn't want to swap with them.
Yeah,
I don't want their life.
Yeah.
I'd like some of their freedom, but, you know, financially, but actually, if you said, would you like to swap your whole life for their whole life? It's like, no, I really wouldn't.
Yeah, right.
I can't believe how happy it's made me for Ruairi to gesture to me and say, I know it shows up in the data. It's a very proud moment for me.
Yeah, we've talked about that data. Yeah.
If he didn't say that, there was some data.
I guess that's
about to show up.
Yeah.
I guess that's what that's why I'm reluctant to draw hard lines on labels, because you want to have the ability to change. You want to have the ability to grow. You want to have ability to read the data and say, oh, okay, well, there's another way. This is what I'm feeling emotionally. Like, this is an emotional reaction I'm having to something that I don't need to feel this way about, because data actually shows me that that's actually not what I'm feeling, or most likely it's not what I'm feeling. And I know there's no hard line on data too. I mean, there's
it's an approximation.
It's always an approximation. But again, kind of just coming back to the competitive thing, and the other people in our fields and our homies and our crew and people that are in you know, closer communities to those crews and so on and so on. We want to see people succeed, because the more people succeed and feel happy, the more people that are happy in the world, and that translates outward and trickles down. Like, to, what did you call it? The tall poppy?
Tall poppy.
Yeah. It was always a weird thing, because being a small town kid that moved to a big city, to, you know, big fish in a small pond. Like, you're doing great work in Long Island, New York, but you come to LA, everybody's really good, and then people in Long Island thinking, well, he just fucking up and left. Like, what an asshole.
He thinks he's better than us.
Yeah, it's like, no, I just wanted to be a better version of me. And I thought this was the pool I needed to be in to get there. And you'd want to assume a lot of people, we can't really assume anything, but that a lot of people were in that position, and they came here to find other like-minded people that could elevate each other. So I want to kind of be this focal point and this reflection of, like, what Michael was talking about. Like, I want you to look at me, and I want you to get something from it.
Right.
Like, I don't want to only be receiving. I mean, it's just like, sounds like a torturous way to live. Like, you never give. It's always on you. People doting upon you. It just sounds unhealthy. And I can see that there's a human tendency in my brain for that, for the want and desire for that to a small degree, and it feels toxic. And it's just something that I constantly have to work at. So I imagine that if people are feeling that, they should take a deeper look and sit with it, you know, and I think that there's a lot of generosity to be offered in the world, and it seems small-minded to think otherwise.
Yeah.
And that labeling kind of has to do with it. Well, this is who I am. This is what I know. This is where I've been. And it's like, okay, until now, you know, there's another minute in front of you. And
it's complicated.
It is.
Though, you know, when I think about Ruairi, when we were talking about Ruairi's ambitions to explore the art, his sort of artistic engagement with mastering, and coming up with systems to help get his mind and body in the right state for the various aspects of the job, right? So thinking about the workflow and the different ways to set up the studio. And your sort of reaction to it was, Jon, your reaction was, well, why not just do it? Like, why do you have to set up a game for yourself? Why not just change your mind in that moment? And that sort of illuminates this tension between the knowing yourself well enough to create the systems that gets the output you want, and the kind of not defining yourself so much that you can't change. So they're in tension with each other, right?
That's really lovely. Yeah.
And so the wisdom is like sort of where to apply both of those things. It's and that's where, again, being a human being, it's not one or the other. It's sort of both at the same time and more one at different times, and it's a sort of iterative process. And you can't be too sure, so when we are labeling ourselves and saying, oh, I can't read, right? This is my, I dyslexic and I have a hard time reading. I read in chunks. I can't read long things and whatever. But I do read long things.
I've made you read to me after you said that.
Yeah, I've read I do read long things.
That's abusive. Sorry,
you read a book to me.
Fucking toxic
in
male.
Bed, and I fell asleep.
But yeah, these labels can limit your growth and your potential, and you can cut yourself short.
Well, if there's a utility to bringing awareness to something that needs to be corrected
for.
I mean, there's obviously a utility and a way to facilitate growth there.
Yeah, giving voice to something that you know or feel and other people know, but you've never said about yourself. Like we were talking last night on the call with Kyle, and it's like, I'm not, for a guy who can, move through the world, I shouldn't be allowed in control of my own time. I'm a horrible manager of time.
Yeah.
And you always show up here on Wednesday.
Yeah,
I do. I do. Late.
5:25.
At 5:25.
Yeah.
But you show up at 5:25 every time.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and we were talking about the tendency, we were talking with you about early on in the conversation, you, Michael, I keep gesturing and assuming that people know we're not Rogan. There's
we're
no
not
video.
On video.
Right. Not yet.
Not yet.
But we were talking with you about, there was a sort of moment in the conversation the other week where you were saying, doesn't really matter the details, but it was kind of like, basically, there's hard work, staring at screens, furrowed brow, and there's joyful communication with humans in the world. Like that time I was in Berlin with my friends, and we were saying, what about if the idea of travel and working with people you love and solving interesting problems was like fundamental to the conception of this new business?
Yes.
Right.
And for me, it's like that sort of, that acknowledging that I'm just not good at managing time. Really what it is that managing time badly is the outcome of wanting to go deep. I love going deep. Like if you're collecting the trash at my house and I manage to catch your eye, we're going deep about trash for 2 minutes.
Right.
Like I love connecting. I love going deep on work, on songs, on problems, on playing with my kids. I'm not a skimmer.
Right.
I want to have a life where I get to go deep. So I need to engineer a work life that plays to that tendency, the positive tendency, and mitigates my negative tendencies. So I can't, knowing that, the idea that I could master 80 songs a week, it's not a recipe. I need to create a business where I can master 25 songs a week, have the time, the permission, and the permission from my clients to go deep and be the best version of me, right?
Right.
So I don't know where I was going with that.
I mean, it's sort of where I don't know where you're going with it, but I can keep going with it.
Yeah,
please.
It's I felt like we arrived at that around the same moment or similar moments. The other day was super healthy for that, and it was beautiful and awesome and all the positive words. I felt very similar, and I think I summarized it as basic or simple, but really I meant like, I don't want to work on 15 clients like a big agency at once. I want to be able to work with a PMC for an extended period of time, 7-8 months, dive in deep, figure out a giant problem or giant problems, systemic problems, and problems not being negative things. I know some people don't like using that word in creativity, but challenges, opportunities, and finding, well, what's not working and how can we configure it to work better or to work or whatever it is, you know, or work more efficiently or with better outcomes. And instead of skimming, like you said, you know, skimming clients, all right, I can do a little bit of that, a little bit of that. You know, I prefer, having developed this kind of breadth of skills over the course of my career, like I like that, to explore that breadth with clients. And I think that was this big moment of like, yeah, that's why there's been this tension internally for me to not scale and get like 1 million clients right now. Even though I could reach out to, like today, someone hit me up about album artwork, could have been like, yeah, dude, I'll do it for like $50, you know, whatever. I easily could have, you know what I mean? And
no, you couldn't have.
But I wouldn't have wanted to.
No, but you wouldn't have done that.
No, I wouldn't have, but I could have.
Yeah.
Nothing was stopping me from like saying yes in that message.
Yes, it was. There was. The value you put on your work. You would not have done that. An album artwork for $50. Right. Hold on, we got to be more specific.
Let's say there's no external force stopping you.
Yeah, but there's a built up internal value that is,
we're diverging
absolutely
here. So what I meant to say is,
it's okay to diverge sometimes.
Well, but internally,
that's an important topic.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm going to reconcile what I was saying. I mean, I could have taken it. I had an opportunity to take a gig, and I didn't, because I didn't want to scale horizontally and just take all the things that were in front of me or that were even just designed. Because to me, it would be skimming, and it would actually take away from the moments where I could go deep, but then I wouldn't be able to, because now I have 50 album covers to do on a Wednesday night, or something like that.
There are a lot of people who are going to be listening to this. That's exactly how they live. Everyone who calls, they're like, got to take the gig. You know, they're just in that rolling. Yeah. It sounds like strong language, but a kind of a poverty mindset. It's like, you never know, tomorrow there might be no gigs. Phone might not ring. Yeah. So every gig you take, and that's going to be familiar to a lot of people. So
it reminds me, because I had this conversation with a buddy who's a designer, Andrew Patty. Shout out to him. We were talking. He's a member of the art club, and then he called me after. We spoke for like 3 hours the other day about his business, and he did do that. So he took on anyone that said, "Do you want to make my website?" Because at the time, and he was really down about it when he's talking to me, because I'm like, yeah, like that's not what I do, blah blah blah, and again, that reflection you see, he's like starting to feel down about it. And I was like, well, like what, like, tell me more about this. Tell me more about the business. And the more we dug in, it was like, well, I was in a ton of student loan debt. I was in credit card debt. I was traveling to see my girlfriend in Berlin, like back and forth. Yeah. I was like, yeah, bro, you should have fucking taken twice as much. Like if you needed to, you had to do what you had to do. I mean, there's no fault to it. And now he's at this place where he doesn't have to do that. And now it's great, because he's now able to pause, survey, respond, and be like, well, I definitely don't want to do that. But I had to. There was sort of a necessity in that moment to do that for other factors. And so I think, people listening that would be like, yeah, I don't want to do this. I'm done. And then like, I'm going to keep this debt, and I'm not going to take on any clients except one.
Yeah. That's great. We talked about it during the week, because we were talking about some numbers around family stuff at home, and sort of looking at expenditure we'd made on stuff, life stuff, and kind of using the numbers as, there's ways to use them as an excuse or stuff that's happened to you, and there's ways to look at them where it can be a tool for kindness to yourself, of like, hey, maybe on this Tuesday where you're beating yourself up, when across your Instagram some dude that has been doing this for 3 years, has a hit record or whatever, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? What am I doing here? And maybe it can be a tool for kindness, or a little bit of empathy for yourself, or a little bit of kind of just like, be kind to yourself today. Right. It's like you've dealt with different challenges to this dude, and who knows what comes next for him or her. Yeah. Like everyone is on their own path, whatever. But just sometimes that's important, to like for this dude, it's kind of like if we were structuring a career for someone, we'd say, geez, you shouldn't just say yes to everything that comes your way. It's a recipe for overwork and not billing enough, whatever. But maybe it's important for him at that moment to do it for a while, to learn a deep lesson, to move to the next level, whatever.
But to move to the next level, so I think it's important for people generally to understand this flywheel metaphor, because it speaks to the momentum that is inherent to human existence, where we are, our brains do change, but they don't change overnight, right? And so there's a sort of momentum in our behavior, and the things we practice, we tend to keep doing, right? So if you're not aware of the things you like and don't like to do, you could be building a negative flywheel, right? Yes. By getting, so it's very important to be in touch with oneself. And again, why meditation is always coming up is like, if you can't even recognize the things you don't like doing and you feel you have to do them, you can be trapped by them for years and years and years, just as a sort of matter of course. So, I think the know thyself principle, just like every time we drill down, it just comes back to recognizing the things that, one, are pleasurable or not pleasurable in the moment, and then things that are pleasurable or not pleasurable that fit into the context of like the primary aim of where you're trying to go.
Right.
We should define that. Well, one thing, I have it here anyway, a note. Something you always come back to as well in the context of these conversations, Spider, is having a cohort, a group of homies, people that you can, what we're doing here, what we do with other friends of ours. You're talking about your design friend in our club. Separate to mentors, but a group of people where you can do the ugly growing and peel the onion layer and know that they've got your back, that, because we're never done. You're never, I've never met a realized being, I'm sure they're out there, but I've never met one. Everyone has some work to do, and you always bring it back to sort of the importance of that, reconciling your internal view of yourself and your external view. So like, I had this conversation with my daughter this morning, and my 9-year-old, and it's like what she thinks about what's happening at certain moments and what the reality was, and they were out of sync, and it was causing a lot of suffering in our house at 10:30 this morning. So you've been very good at sort of putting words on that, of like the importance of having a group of people around you that you can move through this stuff with. And it doesn't really, it's obvious when you say it. It's like, who would argue with that? Again, if we took a poll on the street and said, should you have friends? It's like, yeah, you probably should. Would you like to be happy? I would. Now I'm going to go and ignore my friends and be unhappy. But the actual, we meet so many people who are like, if I could just get that fucking API pre, and I was that kid for a long time. If I just had this or that, if I could just get my studio out of the valley and into Hollywood, then people would come and co-write.
Right.
And it's like, if people were even remotely as driven to nourish their friends, to build a cohort, and to actually, it feels very un-American to me to nakedly state sort of vulnerability and kind of need. It's so normal to state ambition. Like, I'm going to fucking be king of the world, bitches. What about that? And everyone's like, yo, you go, man. In Ireland, you say that, people are like, fucking asshole, full of himself, right? Or in Australia, right? Tall poppy. It's just...
Where did Conor McGregor come from then?
That's fucking, I think,
it's performance art.
3/4 of the DSM right there. That guy's got fucking deep issues.
Performance art.
But... What was I saying before?
Sorry, it was too...
no.
Missed that guy.
Tall poppy.
We were talking about tall poppy. Oh, but just the sort of un-Americanness of being vulnerable and saying, I need friends, I need a cohort, I need a group of people to move through this. So instead of coming to LA or New York or Atlanta and thinking, if I can get the right room in the right town and the right version of Pro Tools and the C800 and the Waves bundle, and if I can just get this guy's number, it's like maybe starting with, I've got a laptop and I've got a homie or two homies.
It gives new meaning to the phrase "who you know."
And we've made a point to try not to be prescriptive and tell people what they should do. But I've been lucky. I've always had good friends in my life, but I've never been so
deliberate
about trying to work through my bullshit as I have with you guys.
Yeah.
I have good friends in Ireland who I would be very honest with and particularly about emotional stuff, family stuff, love stuff, whatever. But work-wise, it's, what we're doing is new for me at the level we're doing it at. And it's really powerful.
Doesn't it feel good?
It feels great. And super and ugly, super scary.
Yeah,
ugly.
it can be. I want Michael to text me and say, yeah, I need to talk about this, and that's it. That's what we're doing. Like there's an agenda of this friend is in this mood and needs this, right? There's an agenda. Of course, like you started out the conversation with, we're all going to talk about everything. Like a lot's going to come up. But if you don't bring it up like that, then we don't know. We're not mind readers here. We're good at feeling people's vibes to a degree and energy, but if you need something, voice it. And I think that's where this starts. That's the un-American, is the not wanting or feeling comfortable enough to voice your need.
Yeah, or even knowing there is a need. A lot of people are trapped in these loops, and they don't know that they don't know. It's back to the same thing again. It's the self-knowledge thing.
But nothing gives. Sorry.
No, it's
but nothing gives a human more satisfaction than helping someone else, right? Like there is data on this.
Right.
You feel better when you spend money on someone else more than you feel about yourself when it's spent on yourself. Like this is a thing, and I know it firsthand.
Unless it's unless helping other people is becomes pathological.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
Right. That's a sort of a pattern for me where the way I characterize it with Spider and Kyle, we were having a planning meeting last night. Is if you asked me to say, if you said, would you like to miss your daughter's birthday? I would say no, I would not like that. But if you said, would you like to solve this interesting problem at this guy's studio? And it's complex and it'll probably get messy. And he's going to refer you to his buddy and they're going to ask you to master this record, but the mixes aren't done yet and they're going to be late. And I would say yes to all of those problems and miss my daughter's birthday. I've never missed my daughter's birthday. Let's put that on the record. But I've done things like it. Showing up late for my parents' wedding anniversary dinner or whatever. I will say yes to all of the things. And again, we're back to the unhealthy engine that drives decisions, insecurity or a sort of a poverty mindset or a no one will ever call me, no one will like me if I don't say yes, whatever, all of these things. So I forgot what the jumping off point was for that.
Well, the idea of being pathological with your generosity.
Yes, generosity, yeah. So there's and this sort of loops back to something we spoke about, you spoke about early in episodes, is that sort of self-care thing. Yeah. And having boundaries and sort of limits where it's like, I can't, we always say, put your mask on first on the plane and then your kid's mask.
Yeah.
It's counterintuitive. It's like, I love my kids more than anything. Of course I'm going to put their mask on first.
Yeah, I think I was making that comment or stating that fact about the data that says this from that vantage point.
Yes.
Of put your mask on first. So we're already to the point where we know self-care is important, but also take a step back and do something for someone else as well.
We know self-care is important and we kind of at various points do it well or not. Not everyone knows that, I guess. It's
hard to know how sometimes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think a lot of times self-care sounds like a solo venture when a lot of times it does involve other people, or it can, and it could accelerate the growth. Like I pulled up Facebook Messenger. I have a chat with two friends, and a buddy was supposed to come to art club. He's a close friend of mine. He's been going through a lot and wrote in a message just like, sorry I missed it, and going through a lot, and explained it in depth and was apologizing and everything. And I'm like, totally understand the need to isolate when this stuff's going on. You know what I mean? But I also want this group to be a space that you can say that, because that's the whole point, really. We're not here to just talk about pixels on a screen. Like, it's a fucking weird time.
Yeah.
And like, midway through art club last time, I was like, I've been in a really low mood. Like, and I was just going in like, is anyone there? Does anyone feel that? Do they not? Like, I want that to be a space where you can feel that way, because I think him saying that was a way of him caring for himself. One, like pausing to not attend was a way of self-care.
Yep.
But if he just did that and never explained it and disappeared, it wouldn't be the full arc. Like the full arc was actually being able to say, I needed that. And being able to hear a response from a friend that's like, that's amazing. And I'm happy that you're doing it.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't want anything else, but I also don't want you to be isolating yourself too much if, you know, it's a pathological thing, you know, and I'm here to help, you know, basically. And, you know, it's so self-care, people don't necessarily always know how to do it. And it's become such a meme of like, take care of yourself, you know, put yourself first or whatever. It's like, okay, cool. How? You know,
I feel it's become productized I'm talking about America. I sound like fucking Noam Chomsky or something the way I'm talking. But, you know, again, I'm the one with the perspective from outside. And I do feel like self-care has become, you know, commercialized or productized in a way that it almost sounds like, on Tuesdays, I check these 4 boxes and I have self-cared.
I've self-cared.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not how it works.
This reminds me of a sort of extreme example of self-care, but my brother passed away a couple of summers ago. And when I went back home, my brother had... he had struggled with addiction for decades, and it was sort of no surprise to us that it would happen at some point. My other brother, Mark, came over from London, and I came into Philly from LA, and we had sort of accepted, the two of us, that this was going to happen at some point. And, you know, so in a way we'd prepared, like we've grieved the loss of our brother early in our lives because it was... we never really had that adult relationship that we expected to have with him, right? So we'd had a grieving process. But when we got there, you know, my mom and dad were devastated, obviously, and we were helping them. And we hung around the house and people would come and visit, right? And I had the opportunity to just sort of sit and listen. And what it was there was sort of casual conversation when somebody would come over, and it would be kind of normal, quote unquote. And then there would be some story or explanation or some description of what they're going through and you know, what John's death meant to them. And visitor after visitor, this story evolved. And it dawned on me, I was like, oh, this is how it's getting processed. It's not that they're sort of in their heads doing this. It's that they're acknowledging what's inside. In order to communicate it to other people, they had to better understand it themselves. And each time they iterated on the story, it was more and more integrated, right? So that trauma was being integrated in every one of those conversations. And to me, that was just such a sort of powerful moment that we all got to talk about.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, so I think this principle of talking about what's happening is a very efficient way of moving through things and processing things and, you know, even learning things. So if you're responsible to teach something to someone, you have to, you know, teachers tend to get better and better at it, right? So they're clarifying their own understanding in the process of teaching somebody else.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a few metaphors, one being like bands that are in their rehearsal space playing by themselves versus going on tour. Like any time any band that I've been playing with has gone on tour, our 2 shows have been better than 15 rehearsals because you're getting this visceral response. You're feeling it in the moment with everyone else that's there, and after, and and life is collaborative, you know, and it's you're getting this feedback and hearing your parents like recite the narrative in their head and iterating upon that. They're hearing in many ways that it's okay to, as they're going deeper into it, that it's still received as well as the more baseline one. And so as they're going deeper and deeper into this with the next person that shows up and they're like, I'm so sorry, you know, and it's the same response. It's not like, whoa, too much here, you know, like, or something like that.
Right.
They're seeing that it's totally okay to do. And, you know, it's an unfortunate thing because I experienced loss in my life as well when my mom passed away. And it's like, there's that moment I remember feeling it. It's like there was this like period of time where like you could be vulnerable around people, and like it was well accepted. Like I could be vulnerable all the fucking time, any way I wanted to. If I wanted to cry on the subway,
no such
Mom
thing
died,
as oversharing.
totally fine, right? Yeah. But then like you cry on the subway just because you know you got fired from your job, and feel like, yo, dude, this guy's out of his mind, you know, like whatever. Or like there's tiers of like what this means, and you know, seeing that happen, there was so much. I mean, there's episode upon episode of learnings that I had from that experience, but the acceptance of your vulnerability in that moment, crying in front of my best friends I've never cried in front of before, and not feeling any bit ashamed, and them encouraging it in that moment was like, whoa, like what? I didn't know that was part of this relationship. Like it really just opened up sort of another layer and level of interaction that you could have in a group. And I think to your point, it really showed the benefit of community, of people, of feedback, and how vulnerability works into that. And so now it's just like, I mean, you know, my buddy's friend, my buddy's mom passed away of coronavirus actually about a week ago, and I immediately called him. I'm like, hey man, I know that you're pretending nothing's happening right now. I saw you like on Instagram just doing the usual, but like it's totally fine to be upset about this. Like there's no reason to not feel that way. And he's a close friend in New York, and I know how he responds.
Sure.
And it was just like, it's totally fine. Like there's going to be days where it's weird and you want to cry and whatever, and you should do that and fully, you know, and embrace that with me or with someone, or, you know, but yeah, I don't know. I think those are always moments where vulnerability is fully accepted, but I think it's these other times, like my buddy messaging me on Instagram or Facebook, shout out to Zach, where it's like, where they're expressing vulnerability for not coming to a monthly meetup, you know?
Well, no one wants to let anybody down.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know?
Expressing vulnerability is a component of the main point here, which is it's the talking through your things, right? So the idea of finding like we have these sort of horizontal relationships where we're in a way contemporaries, even though Rory and I are older than you guys. Like we're kind of in similar places in our lives.
About those things,
yeah. It's like, I mean, we've had a kind of, you know, whatever. It's fine. Like working with contemporaries on specific problems. If you just think about the problems in your own head, you're probably going to frame them in a way that's limiting to your ability to jump out of it. So you want the biases. This is the cool thing about bias. It's like, yes, any one individual is too biased to really understand anything. If you add up all the biases of other people, now you're sort of
making
like
an approximate educated guess.
You can see the object from 360 degrees, right? And then you can formulate your move. But unless you engage other people, you don't get those other perspectives.
A couple of things, because while Michael was talking, though I think it's really admirable and beautiful that you would reach out to this person, you clearly know him better than I don't even know who this human is. It's like, well, everyone has to come to the want to grieve on their own accord. So maybe his way of processing it is, you know, spending a week on Instagram,
pretending shit's normal until the floodgates open.
And then what I was just thinking with what Spider was saying is the idea of I'm trying to get better at this. Like I don't want to rehearse things in my head. I don't want to overly bias myself towards what I or someone else is thinking about the circumstance at hand. Like I want to just come to y'all and be like, yo, I just was thinking this thing. How do you feel about this? I'm going to reach out to so-and-so and have this conversation. But before I go too deep into it, like in my own head, why don't we just all talk about it and grab some coffee?
Why don't we just skip to the good part?
It's one of my favorite things about you, that you do that.
Yeah.
That you're very, like the conversation we had when I just arrived tonight about.
Yeah, I wish it was longer, but
yeah.
Because I can go and I'm sure that what we have to say will benefit more than just me in the room
every time.
As much as possible. But it's this idea that Michael was saying about the band rehearsal. It's like the performance is always better than the rehearsal So like, let's get right to the performance as fast as possible. That's why when a professional act goes out to tour, they like book a week of rehearsal because they're just getting ready to go. They're not like, well, we got a month out, so let's get the band together and start jamming. It's like, no, they have 2 hours a day at this studio for this purpose, and it's business and it's straight to it. The rehearsal takes a back seat to things. So it'd be nice if, I mean, I'm trying to get good at this, so I'm not trying to prescribe anything to anybody. Instead of sitting with it for too long, we do it at dinner before we record the podcast. We're like, what do we want to talk about tonight? Which we didn't do tonight, which actually felt really good to jump off without anything. But sometimes we say, what should we talk about tonight? And then one of us will say something, and usually Rory will go, all right, cool, let's like cut it there. You know, let's not actually exhaust it here. We want to talk about something that in regards to this, cool. And we're all going to have that in our heads. Like, I know what's making me upset to a degree, but I don't really know where it's stemming from. But Spider might know. Spider might say, well, last week you kind of were off at the dinner at this, and you made a comment that I heard, but I didn't want to bring it up yet. I didn't know. It's like, oh, you heard that? I didn't even know I said that. And so I love the idea of being open and vulnerable as a common practice, and being open to the idea of vulnerability. I just think everyone has to come at it at their own pace. And
you have to open yourself up to criticism.
Yeah, that's exactly. There's something different about in a creative to kind of round about this into a creative world. It's like criticism. If you're afraid to show peers or people that are not in your field what you're working on to get open criticism, I mean, what are you? What are you doing?
I'm taking that personally right now.
I feel attacked.
It's a form of vulnerability. I mean, this is your work.
Exactly that.
Yeah,
you know,
the Gary V quote that I sent you guys during the week. Perfectionism is insecurity with fucking lipstick on.
Yeah,
I had never seen that. I thought it was great.
I've heard that.
I'm struck by, I think without prescribing anything, we're and this is something that Spider and I have looped around at various points with various clients, is like sort of identifying these fundamental needs. There's just a human need. It's timeless. If you're a sculptor or a painter or a, bioengineer, you need a cohort. You need people around you to process life. And life is more, it's moving faster. Let's not get on Piketty and sort of say it's better than it ever was, but it's certainly intense by any measure. The amount of information and stuff we're processing. The level
of novelty. I mean, just...
The level of novelty and the amount of other people's stuff that we're exposed to. People, there are millions of people who know what Kim Kardashian had for breakfast today. Millions of people who could tell you she had, these eggs done this way. No, of course not.
You guys know Keeping Up with the Kardashians is ending 2020?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's
fantastic news.
We'll grieve that after the podcast.
I might need a little more time. I'm not ready yet.
I don't want to get.
I'm still in the shock phase.
I don't want to get emotional on air.
Disbelief.
But what I was struck by is how difficult the music space, the space we work in, is entirely built on fronting. It's all a game of like, sort of, it's a kind of a facade, right? Mostly, very few people are demonstrating open vulnerability daily, and it's not really productive in much of the music space to say, "I'm not booked. No one called. They beat me up about my rate." It's not what you post on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
People flag their successes, hide their failures or perceived failures, whatever. So there's a kind of a discontinuity between this need that we've touched on tonight and the reality of the music business, which again just brings us back to the need to have, okay, if you're going to play this game and it involves a certain degree of kind of fronting and showmanship or storytelling, you need those four guys or girls or mix in any ratio you like to get you through.
Yeah.
You need people to just say it's okay to work,
To expand upon the game metaphor, it's like being in a boxing ring and just continuing to box and never stopping. It's just like, like you're always in the match, but you're never taking a break. You're never training. You're never resting. You're just always.
You need to suck on that squeezy bottle.
I mean,
you
need the
that.
squeezy bottle.
Rounds are a certain number for a reason. You can only exhaust yourself so much.
But I think, in a lot of the work that we do, there's no clear time when it's like, oh, this is a time to take a break, to circle back to kind of burnout and stuff like that. It's like there is no clear end of the match, and so it's really up to you to decide and define what that looks like, how much is too much, and
process.
And it might be at a different time of the week or month than it is the other time. Spider and I were talking about this before you guys showed up. Just the burnout or the exhaustion comes at different times and when you're not expecting it. And the recovery from it can take longer depending on how hard you were going up until that. And
so bad at predicting it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's no need to predict it, right? I mean, there's no need. There'd be a great need if we had a marker, like an Aura ring that would tell
here
us.
It comes.
That would be great,
Stay
but that's just not how the world.
Hours.
Well, the work is to engineer a life where the realities of life don't upend you. So, if you've engineered a life where if you get sick for a week, you can't make rent, that's a problem. So you need to sort of acknowledge these. If you've engineered a work life where it's expected that you'll be productive 52 weeks a year, that's a problem. If you commit to rent or, other obligations based on that, you've got an unsustainable situation. So,
but a lot of people, I would say most people don't realize that they're making commitments and engineering systems. They're just not thinking in this sort of specific way.
That's
you know what I mean?
I'm learning through our work with Unfuck is we're having these calls with people. We had a call with a client, I don't know, maybe 5-6 weeks ago, who was determined to build a studio, and it was like in their mind it was the only next step. The only way to success was via this owning a studio route. And as best we could tell when we really explored what he was trying to do with his life, it didn't make any sense to build a studio, to sink his money into that right then. Very creative, very hip dude who needs to be here. Handsome, talented, lots going on, and the sort of anchor of a studio in a provincial city. Just didn't make any sense. But to him, it was a kind of a manifestation of physical realization of kind of like
it was a front
of it was a kind of a front, but also kind of a, if I don't have this or the API mic or whatever, I'm not.
Right.
I'm not legit. I can't there's a lot of kids with laptops, but I've got a spot.
Right.
And it's like, and if I have a spot, people will come. And if people come, I can write songs and then I can go to LA. And it's like, you could just come to LA.
Yeah.
You could use all that money.
Have the spot here.
You could work in your parents' basement, literally in this case, and you could use all that money that you would put into a build in a structure, a building you don't own, and you could come out here and do it. So that that's a massive simplification of our meeting, but it was just just illustrated that point we were making. Can we loop back to something, because you guys said it several times, and I'm not 100% sure I understand what it means, and maybe other people don't either. Primary aim.
I was going to bring that up too. Yeah. It's like pointing the ship in a direction. Like, what's happening here?
What is primary aim, Michael?
Yeah. So it's an internal drive, internal desires, internal goals. It's a combination of a lot of those things that are helping to orient how you want to live, not necessarily like where I need to be, but just like how it's using the metaphor of aiming, like pointing in a direction to say like, this is sort of the combination of things that you want in your life, and then leading to a direction of the lifestyle that you want to have. It's sort of like, it's sharpening the point on the arrow so that it can go and be, when things come in its way, it can go through them or past them instead of being stopped because it's a dull point. You know what I mean?
So if I said to you, I want to be a billionaire,
right?
Is that clear? Like what?
It's not a made up thing. It's a recognition of what your desires actually are.
It's a lot of what we've...
that's interesting.
So it's identifying what motivates you emotionally.
So what you...
Working on interesting problems.
Instead of it's what... Yes.
It's the zoomed out It's the zoom. It's like it's trying to recognize the natural resource that is within you and harnessing it so that one, you eliminate competition because it's what you just sort of naturally do in your sleep. And it's a way of, it's sort of a mission statement that you can test all of your decisions against.
So what about the guy whose family wanted him to be a lawyer? His dad was a lawyer, his granddad was a lawyer. He goes to the great law school and he's in Manhattan and he's miserable and he's doing it, and he decides to come to
Ricochet or whoever.
And open a bakery, right?
That's funny. So in the E-Myth, the example they use throughout is about this bakery. But just an excerpt from this to clarify primary aim and the definition.
Yes.
It's essentially how you want your funeral to go, what you want people to say about you, your accomplishments, your life story when it comes time. But not what you want people to say as like a bragging about you, but it might be. Maybe that's what you want. That's really what you want out of life.
So to use the Steve Jobs example again, I imagine from everything I've read and learned about him is that he would have been quite comfortable with the way he was characterized.
Yeah.
He approved this biography that I read that really, from my viewpoint, was not, it was the, I'll remember the author's name in a minute, but it was not very flattering of him, but that was
Isaacson,
Walter Isaacson. It was a fairly truthful telling, I think, of his life, and he was comfortable with it.
Yes.
Because he really did just want to do what he did.
Yes.
And he wasn't really worried about, the casualties. So
it's the characterization that you want to have about yourself, or that, and that you have about yourself. And it's me saying I'm simple, but no, I know what that means. I don't think saying that it's too summative and it doesn't really describe much. It's probably long-term just toxic to only use that. But it's me defining, how do I want to live? How do I want to be remembered, recognized, thought of?
Yes.
And then what makes me all of those things should make me feel great.
Yes.
About it. So every business decision, the business should be built around, and this is for entrepreneurs and the book's about that. It's like the business should be built around allowing you to achieve that aim. It shouldn't be in conflict with that aim.
Right.
When a lot of times it is. Like being a mix engineer might be in conflict with some people's primary aim.
So to use our Manhattan lawyer, the idea that he would die and be remembered as this great lawyer, or not even so great lawyer, is saddening to him. It's like, what's that? That's not a life. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to be a baker, right?
Right.
Because something that part of the ugly growth in the last month has been sort of this, we talk about sort of reconciling with your ambition, and it's like being something that's sort of fundamental for me is the wish, the urge to realize my potential, knowing that I've got more to offer than I am currently, and trying to find a way to thread that needle and move towards a place where I actually enjoy my days more.
Okay.
Because I'm really pretty bad at that, and actually enjoying my life. So sort of like, how do I sort of square that circle of sort of realizing my ambition and building a better character of my day,
Well, as an
expert, should be the same. Yeah.
As an expert on how to live a perfect life. No.
I like the way you leaned into the mic right then.
Let me tell you some bullshit I'm about to make up. No. The book isn't, like, the primary aim portion of the book isn't to be like, this is how you figure out what business to start or who to be. This is like, you're running a business that ideally you want to be doing, but it always starts with you. Like, you're going to be the one that self-sabotages it, or the market. There's obviously that factor. But let's say that's all good. Then you're that factor in terms of it growing or not. Based on a lot of other things you're going to have to do: marketing, sales, advertising, processes, hiring, etc. Right? There's so much. But like, you're the first person, and you're the person lighting the fuses for all those things. So are you building a business where all those fuses need to be lit and at 10,000 degrees, and are you that person that is really has that energy? Are you building a business that requires more energy than you even want to give or seek to?
That's so important.
It's not necessarily like, and if your primary aim is that, you should be a lawyer. Like it's not necessarily, I think you could be a lawyer, but also be working maybe in a specific type of law that really gets at how you want to be
Your
remembered
values,
and the things you value. So he starts the book off talking about getting your mind right and your vision right and your perspective right, because there's a huge, difficult road up ahead. Yes. So as long as you know that you're oriented, and that's why it's like an aim. I see it like an arrow or a compass or anything. Like as long as you're oriented in the right direction and you believe that what you're doing is in the right direction, the business should evolve around you and complement you.
Yes.
Otherwise, you have an internal conflict in the business, which is an obstacle, which makes it less viable and less likely to be successful. So if you're looking at, again, we can set the terminology aside in the exercise of trying to figure out what a primary aim might be for someone. Acknowledging that there is internal emotional drive that everyone has, and if the structure of the business or the expectations of the individual are in conflict with those emotional drives, if the emotional drive is taking someone elsewhere in their thoughts, that's a problem for the business.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's essentially the biggest business vulnerability is going to be yourself, and then the market. Because either you've chosen the wrong market because you're kind of self-sabotaging it, because in a way you're like, I don't really want to do this.
I don't really want success. Yeah.
Or you're right, exactly. So it's just like you're the front line,
We all know people who've taken on careers and gone down career paths because they think it's a smart thing to do, and then they get to a point where it's just like, I can't.
It's untenable,
And then they do the thing they probably should have been doing.
We talked some about it the other day about this alignment thing that I've been talking about with my wife. And just being internally aligned, not having, and you had a different way of framing it, which was just as useful, if not more so. But not having these sort of counter narratives that you haven't integrated, like I must be successful because I have immigrant parents and they told me you must amount to something. But really, I just want to grow fruit in the country and have a small life. I don't want to be a doctor or whatever. I don't know. You have this tension that you haven't resolved, and that nothing really happens until you can figure figure out those tensions and resolve them and integrate them.
I would flip it to be positive, which is that when you realize the things that bring you joy or spark joy, happiness, that energize you, they might not be hyper energetic things, but they energize you in a way, whether that's helping someone or whatever, like whether that's money even. I mean, some people are like really, really motivated by money. And let's say that doesn't come from trauma. They just really want to have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of their primary aim. They want to be able to make a lot of money. So that should probably guide how they run their business, right? And it doesn't mean that their other aim might be to be seen as a great person when they die, right? Yeah. So it doesn't mean it might not mean a Steve Jobs life, or not even him, because I think a lot of people do respect him and loved him. But, there are business people where it's just like, wow, that is just a cutthroat business person. Yes. That's all they wanted to do.
Are we shouting Zuck out again? How does that work?
I don't know. Did anyone see that sunscreen photo of him?
No.
Shit was terrifying.
No.
It's like him on a wakeboard with just like white ass face of sunscreen. It's fascinating. I'll pull it up and show you.
I'll pass.
No, it's
I was trying to, what was I thinking? Fuck. It's good. Oh shit.
It's because you said I'll pass.
It was the vision of Zuckerberg with sunscreen. It like wiped. It just wiped my
a micro trauma.
What were we talking about?
Michael was talking about the lawyer and the.
I've been lost for 15 minutes, so I'm going to be no help.
It's just getting further.
So primary aim didn't land for you?
No.
Okay.
It feels like a self-help book to me that I don't understand the importance of necessarily, or that's how I'm reconciling it in my brain at the moment.
Okay.
Like, so, that it's another way to learn how to steer yourself in the right direction when we don't really know what the right direction is to begin with. I did resonate with the emotional sensitivity part, what drives us emotionally and motivates us emotionally. I think that part landed with me.
This feels to me like when you and Spider talk about mixing, and he's saying you're making decisions and you're saying you're not.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Is primary aim just something that you've nailed and you didn't realize that you've nailed it?
No, by no means. I mean,
you're fantasizing about your future lifestyle all the time. I feel like you're in a constant state of updating your primary aim.
I think.
Yeah, I don't want, again, back to the no label thing. I don't want to label it as I'm trying to discover my primary aim. I'm trying to discover what it feels like to live a life worth living.
Yes. So
it seems like another way to say that.
We should make a.
But then we got into it's an entrepreneurial point of view, and then I was like, oh, okay. So we're talking about running our business that way. So then I got a little bit confused.
Yeah,
I think to clarify, it's not about running your business that way, like a way. It's more knowing what emotionally drives you.
Yeah.
The life that you want to live.
Resource.
Right.
Yeah.
And making sure that the business doesn't get in the way of that and is in support of wherever you want to go.
Or it brings recognition to maybe you're in the wrong business.
But isn't it
other
exactly.
It's true of anything in life. If you agree to coach your daughter's softball team and you hate kids or you hate sport, but you feel like you should because the other parents want you to, it's just about, it's a kind of about
guilt is a bad motivator.
Being true to yourself. So, and what's important, I guess, to say is that, the point you're making is that it isn't a one-time deal. You're constantly, we spoke about it when I said that I was flying with my father-in-law in his plane, that you're constantly course correcting. You're constantly updating the heading. So, but I think it might be one of those things that you've kind of nailed, which you don't realize how, I'm not going to say that it came easy to you, but you did it well and it feels easy to you and that it's not for a lot of other people.
But that's an external perspective that you might have on me. I have no reason to believe that I am where I want to be because I don't even know where I want to be. I've never pinpointed it. I've never really tried. I mean, I'm listening to this conversation going.
I hear you talk about it all the time.
I'm not buying that.
What do you mean?
The adjustments you're making in your life and your lifestyle, and
no, I don't.
Right.
It's like ongoing.
Wow. Again, that's one of those things that, like I said earlier at the dinner table, Spider might hear you say these things. Again, I guess I'm not categorizing it as I want to elevate my, yes, I know what you're saying. I'm not thinking of it in that term. I'm thinking like, well, this is what I'm thinking about at the moment. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
But I think you're very good.
Yeah, you're right.
You're very good at declaring intention.
Yes.
And it's one of the things that when I got to know you first, I found brash and uncomfortable because I'm not good at declaring intention because it's not really how we roll in Ireland and particularly how I'm wired. And I found it kind of like it rubbed for me.
Can I have an example?
I don't remember a specific example.
Yeah,
I'd rather not say. But
I can't imagine us rubbing. But yeah,
as I've gotten to know you, that's really good. As I've gotten to know you, it's become one of my favorite things about you. Whatever discomfort I have around it, I'm leaning into it with you because I have so much to learn in that regard, like so much. So I think you might be very good at it and not know that you're very good at it.
Well, I think what Jon's resistance to the categorization labels and sort of even verbal descriptions it's underlining something important, which is this sort of open-mindedness to what's possible.
Yeah.
And so Jon is going to be sensitive about what's limiting that sort of potential development that you can't even understand or predict.
What did we say in what I said about Jon when we were talking the other day? We were talking about how we're all at different places.
Yeah.
And I said, Jon, you've had really good success in your mixing work. You've built a career that a lot of people would envy.
Yeah.
And I said, you haven't even gotten started. Like this is chapter 1.
And I don't gotten started. Yeah.
And I don't mean that in terms of like mixing bigger records or more of them. I mean just like the story of Jon. This is chapter 1. Yeah. I feel like you're just getting going. So in that spirit, I totally get what you mean.
It's funny that because we're back to the rub thing, like you brought it back to that at the table, and I wanted to also. I always feel like we're aligned on these, like these terminologies that are said, and then we're like, what is that? And you're actually coming at it like you kind of want to learn it, and I'm listening to it being like, okay, I think I can see this helping somebody, but there's a bigger part that I don't even know how to put my finger on, how to say it back and like kind of enlighten the table in a sense where I'm not smart enough to know how to do that. I just know that there's something more than that book. The book is helpful in a micro sense. It's like, okay, cool, we need to point this direction constantly. Okay, what's the motivator? Okay, it's emotional, it's not monetary, it's not guilt, it's not based off of one specific thing. Like there are books that are way more specific than that book probably. Like, well, if you do this and 9 steps to get here, it's like those I'll run from the hills if you brought up that book.
Shout out to The Secret.
But you're having a very similar friction to these things too, but you're coming at it from a place of I want to know, and I'm a little resistant because they seem, and please correct me because you've read the books, obviously. I'm blind here. I'm running blind. It doesn't sound very helpful to my brain, and not because I think it's quite the opposite. I'm like, I want it to be. I want to point my ship.
So what are you doing when George and I are on the sofa and you stand up and you're like, it's the rule of 10s. In 10 years, I want to have 10 dishes, 10 tables.
That's a concept for a restaurant. Like, that's what that is.
Yeah, but then you went and adjusted. Like you made time to practice cooking. Like if you optimized your mix business and crowded out your time and had no time, then that thing would never happen. You know what I mean? Like you adjusted the business to give you the space to do something later.
But that's what happens. That's
a version of that.
Yeah, right, sure.
I think the pursuit of passion is a big primary aim for you, if I were to say.
That's a...
You know, like you're building a business that allows you to take time off, that allows you to
follow creative impulse. That would be like a primary aim.
This is getting a bit more tactile version of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
the lawyer example didn't really nail it for me.
that was clumsy. I was trying to.
Are we like close? Are any of us close with a lawyer? I mean, my stepbrother is a lawyer. But we're not like close.
No,
yeah, I'm not close.
I've only been around one real lawyer ever. And honestly,
dropping lawyer examples.
And that was like a very simple kind of cliched idea of, high profile successful job that maybe doesn't fit you.
Of course.
You hear people leaving finance all the time.
These are
they
tropes.
find it soulless.
Yeah, it's.
I guess I'm looking for a utility in it, and I think we're stumbling upon it now. Where I maybe hypothetically, if I was aware of this language and this process earlier on in life, I might be on chapter 2. Right. At 34, I'm a little bit of a late developer in certain aspects of life.
If you're late, I'm fucking.
Honestly, I think
what's worse than late?
Hold on, I think you are. I think
later
you're right.
Than late.
Yeah,
I think it's later.
Look, let's be real. Like there are. I mean, I work with them. I work with 22 and 24-year-olds that are way further in their career than I am. Right. At a thing I want it to be.
Of course.
So where we are late developers, you're a little later than I.
22-year-old classical saxophonists are you working with?
Yeah, seriously. That have cooked by accounts. Come on now.
No,
I think the utility is multi-layered. I think the parent layer is primary aim, the word. But underneath, you unpacked a lot of that, and you decoded kind of what he's encoding in that word, which is it is about orientation. It's like it is about protecting yourself from your business. That's a huge concept in that one word that he's, embedding. It's about knowing your values and knowing that you're going to build upon them, but really spending the time to seek them so that the business and everything that comes with the business, whether it's clients or money or what legal things, whatever contracts you need to write, that don't conflict with what you're doing. And look, it might sometimes, but on the average that it's not. And it's not something that you grow to despise and you grow to being like, damn, this is successful and I'm not happy at all. You
lose motivation if it's not in line with your drive.
And I think because you have a business that is aligned with your primary aims, and we could dissect what those are, I think it's harder to say, well, there's a utility for it.
It's not fully though. It's not fully because something that Rory said earlier that we're all on Instagram touting our successes and accolades, and we're not talking about we're not booked this week or whatever. I'm here to be the opposite. And, and we've had a really good, like, kind of outside of music industry conversation this evening. But when I heard that, I was thinking I'd love to find a place to talk about that. Okay, for the last 2 years, I was mixing and working on 90+% of things I liked that were more in line with where I want my musical, the touch of my craft on. Now I'm not in that. Right now I'm working on a lot of things that I like and a larger percentage of things that I'm not connected with emotionally. And instead of only talking about my platinum records, that that doesn't seem fruitful for an audience. Sure. And so I don't think I'm 100% there because I'm in chapter 1. Right. I do think I had a taste of success, and then I've had an ongoing upstream. I've never plateaued. I have an ongoing subtle uphill.
The general trend is upward.
Has been upward my whole, and I'm lucky to have that. But I also have to be realistic and understanding of that too. And I'm not where I want to be, and I'm not working on the records that I want to be. I'm working on some records that I want to be. In the last 2 years before this evening in this conversation, I can say that I think I was, but that fluctuates.
Of course.
Sure.
And to not acknowledge that on this conversation would be hypocritical to what I want to touch on.
You did. The last time we spoke, you talked about sitting down with Nathaniel, your manager.
And we did.
And really addressing some of these issues that would be, to most managers, perplexing. Like, wait a second, you don't want to work with big pop star X, you want to work on cool, hip indie project Y.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that? And what about my percentage? You know what I mean? But you have a much healthier, longer view with I've never met your manager, but that's my sense of kind of how you guys work together, that it's much healthier.
And he's like, oh, I already knew you were going to come to me after that album. Yeah. Like, he already knew it, you know? Go ahead.
Well, he's aware of your aim, right? As a good manager should be.
Yeah.
Right? Managing that business. Part of that is managing.
He and the three of you at the table are probably more aware of my aim than I am. Right. Clearly, yes. I as you make some examples, yes, I know that I actively talk that way in a direction towards a better future.
All the time.
I'm so unaware of it when it's happening because it just seems like the things that we talk about.
That's right.
Yeah. Which is back to the cohort thing. This just naturally exudes in our conversation because, well, that's what we all want to do. And age aside, we are peers and we're in the same boat in a lot of ways. And we interact with the same people all the time. When you guys do an unfuck thing, I'm like, oh yeah, I know that dude. That dude's cool. We talk on it. Like we all kind of know the same people. So of course our conversations are going to be aligned. I just want to reiterate the thing that you kind of unpacked a second ago is just, I constantly want to be open to change and have zero expectations. So if something doesn't go the way that I thought it was going to go, well, then it went that way. And it's a little heady to think about.
So if you separate expectations and that kind of emotional attachment to ideas and recognize what your desires are, right? That's the hard part, I think. It's like being really honest about what we really want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that.
And actually sometimes
I know what I don't want.
In these unfucked sessions, it's actually hard to get at. And we need to know it. We need to know it in order to feel confident about the moves we're making.
You don't need to know it to sell people shit.
Yeah.
You can, and in fact,
but we need to do it to sell ethically.
You can exploit their fact that they don't.
Exactly.
To sell them
ethically.
Exactly.
To sell them. Yeah. Well, it's just, I think it's kind of like, we've been talking a lot about how we work in that space and where our real value is and what we're doing that actually has real value. And a key component is a kind of an empathy for people and trying to move them through their stuff.
Something difficult. It's hard to do this.
The phrase audio therapy came up last night in our call, but that's the most, what we talk about some gigs that we do where we do good work, we're proud of it, and we leave very tired. And we talk about some sessions where we do
that's what I was going to bring up.
We're energized by the conversation that an hour and 45 after talking to someone, we leave the Google Meet buoyant. And because I feel like what we're doing is tapping into that oil well of energy, that sort of spring. And you see people physically, their demeanor changing on screen.
Totally.
You see these light bulb moments and these physical realizations. Not every time, we're not wizards, right? But certainly that's our increasingly our orientation.
it happens often. I get feedback from it. I hear about it, when it comes back to me in a DM or a text from people.
Yeah.
You do it most of the time.
Yeah,
Definitely wizards in training. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Do you have a wand yet?
Getting one.
We're starting to
Christmas gift, Michael?
It's in
isolate.
Rory's tool case, I think.
Yeah. We're starting to isolate what it is that we're really doing. And what that means for us and for our time and primary aim and all of that.
Making a meaningful difference in people's lives is a primary aim.
While not indulging in my pathologies.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I want to make people hear their song for the first time and differently every time. And if I'm not doing that and I'm only doing like a 1% shift, then I'm not the guy for that gig. Right. And I think that's understanding like, well, I don't want to take on 10 gigs a month like Michael can. I want to dive deeper into these. I want people that want to that are open enough to even have that visceral reaction work with me. That's so that yes, there is a primary aim to a degree. Let's circle back to that.
That assembly line mixing thing doesn't leave you energized. It drains you.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we have to
in Jon?
Jon, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah. And for you too, Rory, like the sort of just, assembly line mastering. It would just dull your brain and drain you.
I love music too much.
Too much, man.
I mean,
I
I rode 20 miles in 105 degrees, having not been on the bike in a long time.
We need a sound effect. Flex.
I thought that was pretty decent.
That's not. I'm sorry.
No, come on.
That's not impressive in cycling world.
No, I know. We're kidding.
And I'm out of shape. I'm in quarantine shape. I'm just getting back on the road.
You saw this guy's legs.
It took everything out of me physically.
Yes.
But I was energized by having done it.
Yeah, totally.
That's how you know.
Yeah,
if it's draining you, reliably draining you, it's not the thing. That's not the thing you should practice doing.
That's such a simple way of expressing it.
Yeah.
And again, when I think about culture, the dominant narrative is that you should go hard and you should be exhausted. And you've teased this out really well over the first probably 4 or 5 episodes that we did. Just how toxic that is. The idea of going hard, the idea of fucking Wendy's at 2 a.m. and all of the bad studio tropes, the studio tan, just the fact that we joke about that, right? Like,
seriously,
all of that.
No,
so it's the way you phrased it there is really good. It's really concise.
Well, I tried something on this week, and I let money be a motivator. Like, let's just talk about this for a second. Yeah. So I got asked to do a gig. I have a bunch of songs that I like that I'm doing. And then this one song comes that it's sent to me and the A&R is like, oh, so-and-so produce it. They really want you to mix it. Like sends me the song. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to work on this. It's not bad by any means. It's fine. It's just so straight up the middle. And not to be disrespectful, that's the goal. It's a Hollywood Records like artist. It's for 15-year-olds to listen to, right? And I don't really want to do it, so I tell Nathaniel to say no. And they come back and they offer more money. Kind of the first experience of that happening, like a fair amount more than my rate. I'm like, really? I guess the producer really I don't know why. I'm like, why me for this? This is not R&B. This is not like my wheelhouse. This is, okay, cool. So I said yes. I get the session in, it's just a fucking disaster, right? It's a disaster. It's got OTT on the mix bus. It's like, it's all insanely smashed. And the first thing I say to myself, this is all internal dialogue. I think I actually might have texted Josh about like, wait, why did they hire me for this? Like, I'm going to make this sound like what I want it to sound like. I'm going to give it some life. I'm going to give it some feel. And they're most likely going to hate this mix. But they're either going to love it or they're going to hate it. It's going to be that much different. But I let money be a motivator. Bad decision, arguably, because I'm internalizing how like much they're going to hate this, the stress level. It's all internal. I sent the mix back. They love the mix, and that's kind of the end of the story. But I let the motivator be money, and it was a test because I won't do that again because it won't go this way the next time. And it's making me, what's the primary aim? That's the name.
Yeah.
That thought mixed with the conversation tonight is making me sharpen up the arrowhead.
Is
A little bit further. It's like, well, I said earlier today that I'm not going to do a gig like that again for that reason. But then you guys talking about that, like, okay, cool. No, now it's done. Right. And even if they offered me double, I probably still would say no, because I didn't enjoy my time doing that. Then after that, I did 4 songs yesterday. I mixed 4 songs from the next one was so sick. And I made way less money on it. And I'm like texting the artist, man, like, yo, this shit's tight. Like, yo, you're on some new shit. Like the conversation, oh man, you really like it. Like I was really fucking with this new Moog I just got. And like the conversation, right? The engagement.
Vibrancy.
the quality of your day.
Yeah, the quality of the day is up. Like, you know, it's just that to sharpen that arrow a bit. I can see why that terminology can be beneficial. I also can see that exact thing happening the same way it did without that terminology at hand. So,
I think there's a quote: "Words make worlds," or "Words shape worlds."
Yes,
I think that's important. It's not necessarily that the word is like, or knowing that word is going to make you do that. Like you might have done it without that. I mean, you did do it without that. But another person who doesn't even know that that's even a possibility of a thing you could do now has a word that they can then
associate.
use. So, and I think that's the benefit there.
The words can limit, right? As soon as you put a word on it, it sort of limits.
That's
the
what I'm
reality.
afraid of. That's a fear.
That's an important fear. But also, words can liberate people.
Sure.
And so if you have a sort of vague notion to something, and then you get a term and an explanation, and now you're just from that platform, you can now launch whatever it is that you're attempting, or it just puts a finer point on things for people. So I think systems, conforming to a system allows human beings to do incredible things they can never do on their own. It also, that rigidity limits what you can do as an individual within that system. Necessarily, in order to be for lack of a better word, a successful part of the machine.
Yes.
And you know, knowing when each is happening, I don't know how you figure that out, but
it depends on how neurotic you are, really.
Well,
I mean, there's
maybe, yeah. I mean, it's part, but the sensitivity to being limited is a sort of a personality trait, you know? And certain people need very clear instructions. They don't thrive. And you know, this is something you've been talking about with me, is like, it's very hard for me when the terms are too ambiguous in any kind of relationship to really turn it on and to really perform. But you know, it's interesting how the convergence divergence thing was so liberating to me, and you guys found the terminology to be so kind of
it beat
gross,
us up. But like, you know, I have
limiting
to say again that conversation, episode 3, if it comes out in that order, was
it will
one of them. Yeah, it will. Yeah, we decided that tonight.
We're converging
just now. We actually
it's on the page. So
that's right.
We it happened.
But that was one of the most difficult conversations, and the one that sort of unlocked the most ideas, the most growth for me.
Yeah.
I thought when you were telling your story about the mix and the money, that
that's the name of his memoir.
The mix,
the mix and the money.
Yeah.
the dollar sign. Yeah.
And but I thought that it's interesting. Your telling of it is kind of like they offered more money, and I'm hearing it going, they must really want Jon's sound, and maybe they got boxed in with production decisions or whatever, and maybe the artist or the artist management or whatever had all sorts of different reasons, and what you felt as limiting is kind of like, I'm trapped with this production with OTT and sounds and textures that I don't like, and
I don't understand.
Well, you don't understand, but you were suffering, kind of going, if I do my thing, they're going to hate it, and on the way in, I'm reading the story as kind of going, well, they really want your thing. They're doubling down, offering more money to get your take on it. And so just the idea of flipping the framing of it could have made that day, with the extra money, a really enjoyable mixtape.
Yeah, right.
Like these guys really want me. I'm free to fucking go deep, to go hard, to go low.
right.
I'm free to Jon Castelli the fuck out of this thing, and get a bigger payday. Like that's like the best mix of the week.
It's a double win. Yeah.
But of course,
Yeah,
I don't
see it that
know.
way,
I don't know the A&R. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Right.
But hearing it, I see someone who really wants to work with you.
That to me
and
is
really
the
wants your
benefit
touch.
of feedback, to circle back to a previous conversation we're having tonight. Like that's the benefit of having people around to say that in an instant, in that moment.
Yes.
A reframing
And it just cool. I can get on with my day and excel and know that I actually still am kind of oriented in the way that I want to be. It's and I can maybe even do a better job.
God, I've had internal debates that go on for years and years and years, and I have one conversation, it's resolved.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
There's some kind of neuroses in there.
It's just who we are, you know.
I mean, the divergence convergence convo.
I mean,
we got.
I have a ton. I imagine you have maybe a little bit more.
oh shit!
It's all coming out.
Comparative neuroses.
This is the moment.
That's what we do. We do comparative neuroses.
Wait, I'm neurotic
sessions.
as fuck. What are you talking about? We
was
got to
just
at least
funny.
admit it.
That was just funny.
If we don't end there, that's it. We've peaked.
Yeah.
We're it's a dick measuring contest for neurosis.
Yeah.
No, I'm way more fucked up than you. No, you really are. Yeah,
You
are.
Yeah.
Speak to my therapist about that.
I don't necessarily see it as a negative to a degree. I think it can.
Well, lots of qualifiers there, bro.
Neuroses by definition is negative.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Sorry.
I don't ordinarily necessarily see it. Often, sometimes as a
All right.
No.
Yeah.
That was
Good night,
really,
everyone.
really enjoyable conversation.
Yeah,
Thank you. And and let's we should probably get together every Wednesday and do this.
yeah.
Oh, what a good idea. We should systematize the conversation.
So can I see you again?
All right. That second bottle of wine never showed up.
Conversations is produced and mixed by Dylan Seals. The Conversations theme was performed and recorded by the Hazelrigg brothers.